This is for educational use only. Our graph is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardenis, to use this as an educational material. Thank you. This topic is about the introduction of ideology of globalization by Manfred B. Steger. The learning objectives of this video discuss about the discovery of globalization, discovery on Manfred's ideology of globalization, and verify Michael Freden's sentiments and know Alger Apadorai's contributions, and classify the escapes of globalization. Introduction of globalization. So, what is globalization? So, the word globalization commonly used in public discourse, but it is often loosely defined in today's society, much like the word culture. So, itself, first appearing in the English language in the 1940s, the term globalization is now commonplace and is used to discuss the circulation of goods, like the fast and furious exchange of ideas, and the movement of people. So, despite it is common use, it seems that many people using the term are often not defining it the same way. So, some treat globalization as simply an economic issue, while others focus more on the social and political aspects. So, what is clear? So, however, it's that globalization has influenced many different facets of contemporary social life. So, this actually makes globalization an ideal topic of study for anthropologists, so who pride themselves on taking a holistic approach to culture to see the development of anthropological ideas chapter. So for our purposes, so we adapt political scientist Manfred Steger's definition, or the definition of globalization. So the intensification of worldwide social relations which link distant localities in such a way that local happenings are shaped by events occurring many miles away and vice versa. Example of globalization hit from India lately but had huge impact on the nation's economic policies and various other aspects. So now let's move on to Manfred B. Steger of globalization. So according to him, globalization is the process of enlarging the world, extending social networks and consciousness. So there are three basic qualities of globalization, which is connectivity, mobility, and imagination. So connectivity. So this is the global connectivity has promoted and fades of global migration, which throughout history has been a key driver for innovation and progress, and escape from like poverty, conflict, and climatic and other disasters. So next is mobility. So mobility, a key characteristic of globalization, is greater mobility of capital, example of labor and ideas. So next is imagination. So their notion of imaginations depart significantly from traditional philosophical and sociological analysis that view imagination as an individual capacity located within the aesthetic realm.
Good day everyone, I'm Decadent Montemayor George. So, why globalization is an ideology? In light of the fact that humanity has been struggling with similar issues in the economic, political, and social arenas. Globalization is an ideology that promises to empower people all over the world. So the point of this slide is our world is facing a common problem in economics, which is political and social sphere. So when we talk about social sphere, it refers to a social self-organization to create a common culture. Next slide. Integration of economies. The increased reliance of economies on each other. The opportunities to be able to buy and sell in any country in the world. The opportunities for labor and capital to locate anywhere in the world. The growth of global markets in finance. So, the example of the integration of economics is the Philippines. Philippines, one of the low economics of rice. Then Philippines will communicate to other country, which is the Vietnam. In 2020, Vietnam is one of the sources of our rice. Then we will buy it and sell to the Filipinos. That is the example of the integration of economics, which is we can buy to the other country and sell to our country. And we can also plant the rice so that we can supply and sell to other countries so that our economies will increase. Third slide. Dimensions of globalization. Economic globalization, political globalization, cultural globalization, ideological globalization.
So next is the types of globalization. So according to Steger, there are three main types of globalism. Ideologies that endow the concept of globalization with particular values and meanings. So first is the market globalism. Market globalism refers to the process of promoting and selling goods and services in an increasingly interdependent and integrated global economy. Next is the justice globalism. So justice globalism is a universal principle applicable to all societies irrespective of religion and ideologies. This view privileges human rights, democracy, and rule of law as indisputable global goods. So, next is the religious globalism. So, religious globalism is a process of realignment in this global religious situation. A process which involves the following three phases. First is a transformation of individual religious organization. Second is a new characteristics of doctrine, ritual, and practices. Third is there will be changes in the human being perspective in religious, particularly in their intellectual. So next is reasons for globalization. So there are many reasons for globalization. First is better resources. Anyone wants to get a better resources, right? So next is the low cost of production, dilution of local market, operating internationally, market expansion, increased profit. As for conclusion, globalization had increased the trade of products, ideas, technologies, and etc., and created the world without boundaries, but it also had some negative impact on the developing country. Flowing with globalization, India is shining in nearly every prospect. India is getting a global recognition and slowly moving towards to become a major economic and political strength. Through the development, I progressing rapidly still many basic problems like rural poverty, corruption, and political stability remain unsolved.
So let's talk about Michael Frieden's sentiment. So Michael Frieden is a professorial research associate of the Department of Politics and International Studies at the School of Oriental and African Studies and universities in London. He is also a Emeritus Professorial Fellow at Manfred College. So when we say Emeritus Professorial, Emeritus is a retired college professor or minister. When a professor stops teaching, he might be given the title of Emeritus, which basically means he can still be remembered as a successful professor. He is also a leading theorist of ideology and also the founding editor of the Journal of Political Ideologies. An ideology is a collection of ideas. Typically, each ideology contains certain ideas on what it considers to be the best form of government and the best economic system. Taking issue with Michael Frieden's skeptical assessment that it is far too early to pronounce globalism status as an ideology. So Michael Frieden believes that ideologies consist of certain concepts whose meaning may change and evolve over time. So he rejected the traditional definition about the ideology which people thought or sees as a belief system. The primary body of this essay bases its assessments of globalism's ideology maturity on three criteria provided by Frieden. So it is suggested that its conceptual structure must be broken down into a collection of 6 key statements that play some important semantic and political functions, maybe more dynamically than simply dividing it into core, adjacent, and peripheral concepts. Frieden reclassified designs based on select features of human behavior, such as pride or a feeling of being better than others, fear or the feeling of being afraid of something or someone, gregariousness, the way of being friendly and outgoing person. Complacency is like being overly comfortable with an existing situation, even if there is or there could be a potential danger that could happen to a person. Vulnerability or the state of a person easily to get attacked or be harmed. Just like wearing too much jewelry in a place where there are lots of criminals. Insubordination, which means refusal to obey orders, and self-depreciation is an act of belittling or undervaluing his or her own self.
Prudence article possesses a number of virtues. According to Prudence, the first virtues reminds wisely to the student of ideology that political belief systems are pattern that only last shortly, whose changing structure demands reassessment on constant examining. Second, virtues of prudence challenge 21st century the analysis of ideology to reappraise conventional classification system. So, scholar must evaluate significance of discredited, popular, and conventional classification system into more immense idea. They must willingly entertain wholesale ideological information and thus be prepared to rethink, revise, and perhaps replace outdated conceptual morphologies that no longer capture the dynamic of actual existing political belief system. So the third virtue is display a considerable intellectual imagination to exercise designed to redraw old ideological boundaries and reclassify ideological system. So it gives us new point of perception to classify ideology system. Following Michael Prudence in 1996, we argue that maturity of ideologies should be assessed according to the three cardinal criteria: their degree of distinctiveness, responsiveness, and effective conceptual deconstitution. Thus, the ability of justice globalization to distinguish itself from other ideologies through distinct core concept and core claims response to a broad range political issue, such as in our case, global climate change, the global financial crisis, or the global food crisis, and its ability to present the constituted explanation of the current global content, provide evidence for the whether justice globalization may be considered a mature and thus coherent political ideology.
Arjun Appadurai contributions. Before I discuss his contributions, who is Arjun Appadurai? He's an Indian American anthropologist recognized as a major theorist in globalization studies. In his anthropological work, he discusses the importance of modernity of nation states and globalization. Relationship between these scapes is deeply disjunctive and profoundly unpredictable. Scapes are intrinsically fluid. This marks a departure, for example, from traditional Martian, the financescape as the most powerful locus demanding the orbit of the dimensions. He discusses how the five essential contracts overthrow the previous notions of separate economies and pure capitalism, which involve the separate, disjointed operations of the economy, culture, and politics. So, what are the five main scapes? Ethnoscapes refers to the flow of people across boundaries. Technoscape refers to the flow of technology. Eduscape refers to the flow of ideas. Financescape refers to the flow of money across political borders. Mediascape refers to the flow of media across borders. Appadurai believes that the relationship between nation and state is now disjunctive and nation and states are in constant conflict. Because of the disorganized capitalism and the disjunctives between labor, finance, and technology, national volatilities and state vulnerabilities come into conflict. Cultural homogenization is an aspect of cultural globalization referring to the reduction in cultural diversity through the popularization and diffusion of a wide array of cultural symbols, not only physical objects but custom ideas and values. It can also impact national identity and cultural, which can be eroded by the impact of global cultural industry and multinational media. The term is usually used in the context of Western culture dominating the destroying other cultures. Cultural heteroization or multicultural society. It is a process of adoption of elements of global culture to local cultures. It is also termed as globalization, which means a case in which a global product is transferred into another shape in order to meet the needs of local consumers. Globalization leads to the rise of uniform culture, or what is called cultural homogenization, but it also leads to each culture becoming more different and distinctive. It is known as cultural heterogenization. So, Arjun argues that central problem of today's global interaction is the tension between cultural homogenization, one man's imagined community is another man's political prison, he says.
So the last is the Appadurai's five scapes or flows. So these are ethnoscapes, technoscapes, ideoscapes, and financescapes and mediascapes. So these five scapes by Appadurai explain how cultures around the world influence each other. So according to him, these five scapes flow have influenced each other more and more over time as globalization has speed up. So next is global cultural flow. So this means involves the flow of people, artifacts, and ideas across national boundaries as a result of globalization. So global cultural flows can be observed in five interdependent landscape or dimensions. Thus distinguish the fundamental disjunctures between economy. So Apadora's escapes theory starts with the idea of global cultural flow. So according to Apadora, that's too simplistic. So we're not to separate words separate by the rich and poor.
Ethnoscape represent the movement of people around the world. Apadori say tourist immigration, tourists or immigrants, refugees, exile, guest worker, and moving groups of person appear to affect the politics of and between nation or unprecedented degree. Apadori 1999 or P297. So example of ectoscape refers to people, especially to who move from one place to another. An example of such individual, including tourists, exiles, refugees, immigration studies that I said. So study abroad, temporary works abroad, and so on. People around for any reason. So idea and information. So next is technoscape. Technoscape refers to the way technology held speed up or boundary movements. Sometimes this is also referred to technology or globalization. For example, the latest or iPhone 14 and so iPhone or other device that we use. So example is handheld device or internet. So technology in a short refers to global agreement and movement of all short technology across worldwide boundaries. They're part of five different dimensions of global culture flows proposed by Arjun Apadori. This is focuses on technology that we will use now.
Good day! So today I'll be continuing the last three scapes of globalization, which are the financescapes, mediascapes, and idioscapes. So first things first, I'm going to discuss to you the financescapes. So when we say financescapes, it talks about where the money goes, which refers to the flow of finances or money across every border. So example of this are cash, stock exchange, or credit cards. Next, I'll be discussing to you about mediascapes. So, mediascapes refers to the flow of media across every border. So, back in the day, it takes a lot of time and effort just to acquire a piece of information or entertainment. But millennium years have passed, everything changed. With the help of technology, which gains us access to the events in different countries or news about a specific country. So, media is no longer limited because we can easily access it from different geographic borders. Next is I'm going to discuss to you about idioscapes. From the word itself, it talks about ideas, which refers the flows of ideas. In our generation, we are so lucky to have a lot of freedom to express our different ideas. Let's say, for example,
you're expressing your knowledge about something on Facebook or Twitter. So, you share your ideas using social media. But back in the days where social media does not exist yet, in order to spread or share their knowledge or ideas is by traveling. So, traveling to a different country and different places was the only way to express and share their ideas. Some wrote books, pamphlets, and believe it or not, musical styles. So, by expressing or delivering your or their ideas to everyone is counted as idioscope.
Globalization is a widely discussed topic. It is therefore not all that easy to explain such a complicated term in simple words. Let's start from the beginning with the background to globalization. Advances in technology, such as mobile phones, aeroplanes, telephones, and the internet, have made the growth of transport and communication networks possible. Amongst other things, this means that people and countries can exchange information and goods more quickly and in a less complicated way. This process is called globalization. Globalization comes from globe and means the worldwide coming together of countries and nations.